Hey everybody, my name is Matt and welcome back to the Coffee Bar podcast. Sorry it's been a little quiet in terms of the podcast, and I haven't posted anything on the YouTube channel. I know I have the functionality to be able to put posts up to be like, hey, you know, there's this thing going on. I think you can set up polls and do that kind of stuff, but there's going to be a little bit of change regarding the podcast. As you will see, it is getting uploaded on a Tuesday. And I made the decision in the back end and really have kind of just kept it to myself that I wanted to move this to a Tuesday release. I did skip one of the weeks, and ultimately what it came down to is just really poor time management. It's a skill that I'm really trying to work on for myself, and sometimes I'll do a little bit better, sometimes I'll just really fall flat in terms of my own personal time management, but like I said, I'm continuing to try and improve that. Moving forward, podcast will be getting released on Tuesdays. And part of the reason is just help break up the releases, because previously I had it set up, or at least the intention is, you know, VOD or gameplay video on Thursday, podcast on Friday, and then if I were doing a tabletop video, that'd be going up Saturday. That's 3 days in a row. I kind of want to spread it out a little bit. I don't want it to be so overwhelming. So the release schedule for weeks where I'm like putting everything out, podcast Tuesday, Thursday VOD or gameplay, and then Saturday would be for the tabletop channel. So that's kind of the plan moving forward. I'm going to be dropping the same information into the Discord server, so if you are not a part of that, I would definitely recommend checking that out. I will have a link down below in the description. Before we get into the main topic, I'll go over some gaming I've done over the course of the past couple of weeks. But before I even want to get into that I don't know if I said this in the last episode, but something I want to do for the themes or talking point of episodes, at least for the upcoming episodes, is I kind of want to actually take the talking points or the questions that I had asked when Stu Magoo was here on the pod, and basically just kind of talk about what my perspective on some of those questions are, and just kind of, you know, get some of that out there, so that way it doesn't feel like I'm just asking a random assortment of questions, but, you know, and I guess also kind of give just some additional things that I can use as talking points. And I try to also have each of the talking points, or at least I keep saying talking points for when I'm saying it, like when I'm asking the guests. So I'm trying to tweak that in my brain, but it's like the talking points specifically for myself. Like, it's a little bit late when I am recording this, so brain's a little bit foggy. Not quite firing on all cylinders, but we'll do our best. So let me try that. Using the questions that I ask the guests, those, I want them to have some sort of a meaning to them. Like, there's a reason why I'm asking these particular questions. And I think they're even questions that I've even asked myself recently, kind of where I stand on them, and especially related towards gaming in different capacities. And, you know, sometimes I think it's kind of fun to like throw in a little bit of a wild card. Susu Magoo's a bit of a movie guy, so asking about like favorite movies, and with him as well being a Star Wars fan, I definitely wanted to you know, kind of put that in there as well. And I think it's just help give a little bit more information from guests that are coming on, and I think some of them are just really fun questions to ask. And I think by extension, they're kind of fun talking points for me to use for podcast episodes. So that's kind of the intention for at least the next couple episodes of the pod. But with that portion out of the way, what I want to do is talk about gaming that I've done over the last couple weeks. And I have, I guess, good news I know definitely good news for me. But I think for those who have been following the channel for a little bit, you might be like, oh, sweet, that's cool. But the last episode, I think, I was working on Thief. I did finish it. I did finally finish the main story. The last mission was... So it was like part 1 of 2 for the last mission of the game that I was at when I had recorded that last episode. Finished it, and being that it was supposed to be a remake of... It was supposed to be a remake of an older Thief game. Is the ending really felt... It was supposed to be meant to have a sequel, where I was kind of hoping the ending would have felt somewhat resolved. It just kind of felt like it just was going to perpetuate this endless cycle. And that I was kind of underwhelmed by that result. The other, at least with that, after having played it and kind of getting to see what that game was, I could see the inspiration that was brought to Dishonored, which is one of my all-time favorite game series that exists. And it kind of gave me this desire to pick Dishonored back up. I think where Dishonored kind of does better than Thief, and I think the original, like the first ever Thief game, was sometime in the 90s, so like PlayStation 1 era. So, you know, there are limitations for like what you're able to do, and because I was playing on the like remaster on the Xbox 360, some of those limitations that would have been present in the original release of the game and then coming into the game, you know, I don't really know what the game looked like in its original state. I'm just looking at it from this like remastered version of it. But if a lot of the things that were in the remaster were from the original, there's a lot of DNA that was brought into Dishonored and kind of allowed the game to feel, you know, basically be what it is now. And I think where I kind of got sidetracked, but the original point, I think where Dishonored kind of flourishes, or I believe Dishonored does a little bit better than even this version of Thief, the more modern at the time, is like the there's kind of a whimsical art style, though it's supposed to be like, you know, dark, kind of dreary, moody in sort of theme. There's this disease looming around, but there's this kind of steampunky element, but there's a The art style's really fun. It's kind of whimsical. Like, whimsical kind of feels like the right word. But you look at the character design and just the world around, and there's a little bit something there that you kind of go, that's not like every other game out there. Whereas you play Thief, and it's, it's that dark, dreary, but it's that super realistic look, and it feels, I know what it's going for, and sometimes having those realistic games that have this like kind of supernatural or not overly grounded in reality aspects being incorporated in is fun, but Dishonored sticks out more in my mind because of the art style, and sometimes just that little bit can make a much larger impact. All that to say, Thief gameplay wise, the gameplay loop was good. Ending fell a bit short, at least for me personally. Might be something that I play again, but I think I'm more likely to go back and play through the Dishonored series, unless I maybe get my hands on older Thief games and kind of see more of the story, but not a super high priority, at least in terms of my own personal gaming library. What I did start though in my own personal gaming library, which I'm actually not sure how far along into it I am, but the original God of War. That I don't remember if I've said on the pod, so I'll kind of tell the tumultuous story of myself and the God of War franchise. So years and years ago, for my fellow millennials, there was a channel on the television called G4, and it had tons and tons and tons of gaming shows. There was Attack of the Show, there was Cheat, X-Play, just to name like some of the big ones, and really the ones that I watched more than anything. I think X-Play and Cheat were ones I watched a lot more than Attack of the Show, though I do have some familiarity. For those who may not be aware of what G4 is, fun fact, Olivia Munn, the who we now know as doing acting stuff, she was on Attack of the Show. So, little fun fact for the day. Put my blue light glasses back on, because I've been staring at screens most of the day and trying to protect my eyes a little bit. But yeah, so between X-Play and Cheat, which I believe, to kind of briefly explain what those two shows are, and why that kind of has an impact on why I really wanted to play God of War. X-Play kind of was a sort of news outlet for some behind the scenes of game development, announcement of games, showing trailers, kind of talking about games coming up. That was the show that I remember recording. Small tangent. I recorded the episode for when Rainbow Six Vegas 2 was coming out, and repeatedly watched it because Vegas 2 was one of the like very, very highly anticipated games for me. And I just was continuing to build the hype for myself, and just went absolutely bonkers mode with it. And then kind of getting back on track, but what Cheat is it was actually a TV show that was doing kind of game walkthroughs, which was really, really neat to have had like on a television show. So I remember watching between X-Play and Cheat, whether like one of the shows might have been covering news for another game that was really out at the time, or maybe it was Cheat was like, hey, here's how to get through such and such a boss fight for this game. You know, however it was kind of divvied up. Well, God of War was sprinkled into it. And being the age that I was in school, I was learning a little bit about Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Egyptian mythology, and because it was tied to history, or there were literary works that we were having to read and, you know, do whatever assignments for, and Greek, Roman mythology, or at least specifically Greek mythology, was kind of poking this little thing in my brain. And it's like, that's cool. That's really cool. And then seeing coverage or them talking about God of War was like, wait, Greek gods, the cool thing. There's a video game with the cool thing. And so my brain is just kind of going, there's a game that I could indulge in the cool thing. And you know, it was that one game that, and also knowing how brutal and gory and bloody and just the kind of style of game it was, might have been a little difficult to let, you know, for my parents to justify getting for me at that age. Like, sure, I was playing some like shooter titles, so kind of your like Rainbow Sixes. I think I was playing some Call of Duty stuff, Battlefield, SOCOM. So you know, I was playing some stuff like that, but God of War's got super brutal takedowns. I mean, you're stabbing your sword through like a minotaur's face, blood gushing everywhere. There's nudity. There's, you know, people getting their heads chopped off. There's a monster that's got nudity, and that just some stuff my parents probably would have been like, no, don't think so. And so I just kind of was, I guess I'll play the game at some other point. But it was always just kind of sitting in my brain. And it was a couple years later, I think it was for either my birthday or for Christmas. I had gone through a bunch of the video games that my stepdad has, and you know, it's this case and it's got a bunch of like PS2 original Xbox stuff, and I'm kind of flipping through, and there's a disc for God of War 1. And I'm like, oh, dude, I'm about to game. So that year for Christmas, I think, I asked for a copy of God of War 2. So then I would have been able to start God of War 1, finish it, play it, go into God of War 2, play through that. And then once it came time to get to God of War 3, I didn't have a PS3. I'd cross that bridge when I got there. Holiday happens. I'm like, oh, and I think by that point I might have forgotten that I asked for God of War 2. I got the game. I'm over the moon. And I'm like, okay, now we gotta go find God of War 1. Where is it? I can't find suddenly I just can't find the disc. So I'm like, well, I want to play the game. It's the game that was poking the thing in my brain. I want to play the game. So I completely skipped God of War 1, played through and beat God of War 2. So just completely skipped the first game. No context, and basically whatever information I did have from watching X player cheat or whatever the game gave me, that's what I knew about God of War 1. Full send it, let's go. Never owned a PS3, so I've never played the third God of War. But fast forward to 2018, I think it was, when what we know, what people I think have called God of War 4, the first one for the Nordic Kratos story. Got that, played through the main story of that, rolled credits, and then eventually Ragnarok, which I think with God of War 4 and Ragnarok, I ended up like playing a bunch of it, stopped for a while, and then picked it back up and finished it. Like I didn't do it where it was like over the course of a month or however long, playing it relatively consistently. It would be like, play it for a couple weeks, drop it for Lord knows how long, and then pick it back up and go. But played through those, and even though I haven't played everything in the series, something about the God of War franchise, I think I feel pretty confident in saying that it's like an all-time favorite franchise in video gaming for myself personally. The action portion is fun. Like there is some difference when you're going from the Greek God of War into the Norse God of War stories. There are differences in terms of how the combat looks or feels. You actually have, there's the difference in control of camera going from one to the other. Certain elements do remain the same, but they do still have their very different vibes to them, and I think there's a lot that the franchise does right, and I'm playing through the first one. Hopefully report back soon with like finishing it out, and then be able to hopefully start the second one. But really stoked to be playing through the first God of War finally, and real excited to get a little bit deeper into it. That's been the video gaming that I've done this week, but I did get to do a little tabletop. I actually got to play Star Wars Shatterpoint, and there is a league at my local game store that is for no eras. To not get too into the weeds with Shatterpoint, essentially how the a box is, the wow brain. I'm like jumping ahead, so I'm trying to like. So when you buy a box, let's pick the Lando box, which is actually a box that I own. It's got Lando, Lobot, and then two of the guards there, the wing guards in Cloud City. So when you go and look at the cards for them, is they have an era that they are legal for, and that counts for list building. So you have the ability to do like the Lando box with the Han box because they're both in the Galactic Civil War era. Some of the units are available in multiple eras. So you have access to being able to maybe mix like Darth Vader with I think there's actually a way you can mix Darth Vader with like Ki-Adi-Mundi, or Darth Vader with Plo Koon, or I think there's even a way to do there's a couple Obi-Wan that are available, but it's like you can, I think there is a way to be able to run a Darth Vader with like General Kenobi. So like, you know, just kind of giving a general kind of rough idea of what like the era restriction is, because the local game store is actually running a league where we get to play no eras. So you can just pretty much, hey, this guy from the Clone Wars, I'm running him with a guy from the Galactic Civil War, or, you know, just being able to do a lot of mix and match. And the game that we played, my opponent was running The Mandalorian and Bad Batch, while I ran Anakin, Captain Rex with 501st Clone Troopers, and then it was the Episode 6 Luke box, so Jedi Knight Luke, Bosch Leia, and then Lando R2 when they were, you know, infiltrated Jabba's palace. And it was unintentionally ended up being an oops all Skywalkers list. And game was a ton of fun. It was casual, but I was trying to, as I was playing, is be able to kind of look at making certain decisions, because I am actually preparing for a Shatterpoint tournament that is going to be a lot more competitive. And it ended up actually being a really close game with this no era. What I made the mistake of is I misread the board and thought that my opponent, one of his squads, the supports, which are like 2 models, I thought they were both on my back objective where I had snuck Lando over. So I move Leia over towards that objective to push the one guy off. That way I could hold the tiebreaker. But after I ended up activating Leia, I realized that I pushed the only enemy that was on the objective, and the other guy was over here. So what I really should have done is, instead of marching towards my opponent's back line, is kind of move Leia over by where Luke was, kind of back him up, and either tie break on the objective in the middle, or run, kind of just push myself further, getting the Mandalorian off of the objective towards essentially on my back line, get him off and take it over, and might have been able to give myself another turn in struggle 3, but ultimately ended up being a good game. I think it was just kind of poor evaluation of the board is kind of just what happened. That's been the gaming that I've done this week. And I know some of it I haven't been like, you know, putting in crazy hours, but I've been able to get a little bit of gaming in and just kind of enjoy the gaming for myself. But let's jump into the topic that I have for today. What I should have done is I should have prepared a couple of notes, just because this has actually been a topic I've been really excited to talk about here on the pod. And I should have prepared a couple of notes just to keep myself a little bit on track, but honestly, we're just going to let the ADHD just go. We're just going to send it. Topic for today is retro gaming versus modern gaming. And there might be a little bit of me answering another question that is among my questions for asking my guests that might get covered, but I think that deserves its own dedicated podcast episode. But one of the things that was kind of a subsection of that question is, what's the cutoff for retro to modern? And this can vary from a lot of different perspectives, just because there's, I believe it's 50 to 60 years now of video games. And that, I mean, we've gone through PC gaming, home consoles. Back in the day, we had the arcade machines, and arcade machines and stuff still exist, and there are places, even one spot that's maybe 15 minutes down the road from where I live, that you could go pay money and be able to play on old arcade, I know there's arcade boxes. I can't remember. There's another arcade cabinets, I think is what it is. But there's a lot of different ways to explore gaming, and they've got different kind of aspects. They have their limitations, they have their capabilities, stuff like that. But the cutoff for what is considered retro, what's considered modern, I think varies from person to person. And I think before we jump into discussing the pros and cons of each, or doing a direct comparison of one to the other, my cutoff, in my personal opinion, is I think the Xbox 360 and the PS3 is everything before I would consider retro gaming. Everything from the Xbox 360, PS3 forward, I would consider modern gaming. And I think just jumping off of that, we may as well just jump right into kind of comparing the two side by side. And reason number one that I would consider the Xbox 360 and PS3 among modern gaming, and something that's, I think, somewhat neat about modern gaming, is the ability for games, you can receive updates to the game to fix bugs that maybe were not caught during the development. There's, hey, maybe there's an unanticipated glitch. You're running through a fielded area and suddenly you just fall through the map. That's not supposed to happen. Might have been just a single line of code that it just wasn't working. They can patch that. Modern gaming also has the ability to there are these huge essentially masterpieces, works of art. You look at the graphics, the environments, you're able to see a lot more storytelling in the world. I'm gonna pick on like Star Wars Battlefront 2 for the new one, for example, is as you're running through the campaign, is you're able to see different places on the forest moon of Endor. You're running through the forest, and then you get to this like crumbled Imperial outpost, and you see the wreckage of ships, and then you're running over and you can see the the monument built that houses the Imperial spacecraft, or the different craft that have landed there. There's the ability to be able to drop small little Easter eggs. So there's like the Halo games are pretty notorious for putting the skulls in the maps. You can kind of hide those, and you can kind of make a game of people trying to find the skulls. There are I just recently, I think it was like 3 weeks ago, played a mission of Helldivers 2, but there's I think there's audio logs that you can pick up. There's some like audio log type of things in Battlefront 2, and it's these little Easter egg bits that you can kind of throw into the game. Pick on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, something I was actually thinking about a little bit before I started recording, is in, I can't remember the name of the town, but on the one of the buildings in the town, it's got the little sprites from Red, Blue, and Yellow to denote the like certain Pokemon when you're in the Pokemon menu. So it's like the little looks like it looks like Seal. There's like the upright monster looking one, the snake sprite, and the plant one. So it's like there's little Easter eggs, little nods that are able to be thrown into the world that you can see, because the graphics allow for the player to be able to look around and see this. And it also does require the player to take a moment and, as they're going through, look around and actually try and find the Easter eggs, which I guess is kind of like they're hidden secrets for a reason. Because these games are larger and they're able to put more code in, they're able to just kind of pack it with more stuff. You're able to get more dialogue. You're able to fit in more character development. You're able to fit in more features. There's a lot of, because of the technical aspects, you're able to fit so much more in, and the size of the game is going to continue to get larger and larger and larger, and the graphics are already going to take up a massive portion, because it's got to load all of those colors. And then you've got to consider things like, how much of the overworld is being loaded in, and how good is it going to look when you're looking 500 feet ahead, or does the graphics stay the same at 500 feet, or is it, from your perspective, does it kind of cut off after about 200 feet and then it kind of blurs everything, like certain things like that. So they're able to shove all of these features in to build out more things to do in the game. And it allows for just more opportunity for storytelling. More side quests can be incorporated if it is something that is open world. There was one other point I had in here, but if I remember, we'll come back to it. But going into the retro gaming is something that retro gaming has, is you buy your game. So long as you have electricity and a console to be able to play that game, you can play that game. there's, you're not going to be able to get any sort of updates, but you can, pop the game in and just play it. And if there's a bug in the game, you're just going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to work around it, or heck, maybe that bug actually works in your favor. Run with it. And that's kind of a fun little thing. I know I'm going to pick on the Pokemon franchise a little bit, but that being a handheld, when you're playing through Red, Blue, Yellow, is like the missing no glitch, or getting like the level 100 Pokemon like immediately, sort of like those goofy little things where you can kind of like play through the game and laugh and like, that was stupid, but that was a lot of fun, and be able to just kind of play the game. You don't have as much available in the overworld, or just in the world around graphically. You're not going to be able to see the perfect curvature of that blade of grass right in front of you. Or, the rock's going to look a little flat, or maybe the water's just kind of the same shade, but you can kind of see the ripples to show waves. But there's something charming about the older graphics that you just kind of go, I think a perfect example actually of this is the old Tomb Raider games. Like the venture into 3D, but like everybody memes on triangle booby Lara Croft. And looking at her now, we all go, that's nothing. We've seen far greater detail in modern games now, but looking at the time, that was mind-bending to people. People had no idea that was even a possibility, and being able to see that is incredible. It's insane. But it's kind of something that we, in a way, almost take for granted, but we've also had years and years and years of, evolution and development of games that have brought us up to where we are now. And that's not just in the development of like, what does a video game story look like? What does a video game cutscene? What does a video game engine look like? How far can the engine go? And with modern gaming, something that it has is, because there's those years and years and years of other games to be able to pull inspiration from, or let them kind of fall on their face and just see what works, what doesn't, is the controller schemes are a lot more intuitive. They make a lot more sense. Like going back to Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, really clunky. The heads-up display, there's a couple of different things that you have to keep track of, but in order to change from like, oh, my rifle, I want to go from single fire to automatic, I have to hold this button and then move through a menu, and have to go through X, Y, and Z step, where in more modern games it might be just click this on the D-pad, or hey, that hold button, that functionality is being for something else. Oh, and it feels a lot better to be able to play the game in your hands. And I think that's something that modern also has. It's got everything else before that has been able to see what has worked, what has not, and use that information to develop what's going to work for their game in particular. Retro gaming, it's the experimental stuff. You're gonna see, might be the first time ever for the time, first time ever that this particular feature has been included in a game. How do the developers allow for players to be able to actually use this function, this feature? What does that look like? How does it feel? What buttons do you have to do? Do you have to go through a completely separate menu to do it? Is it a quick fix sort of a thing? And there's that experimentation. You're also seeing things like, maneuvering around the system limitations that are available at the time. Yes, there are probably some of that even now, but I was actually just recently watching a retrospective on the original Final Fantasy, but when instead of going every shade of the rainbow, and you have to cut that infinite range to let's say 64 colors. I don't remember exact number for the Famicom or the Nintendo Entertainment System, but you cut it down to, we can only run 64 different colors. How do you design characters, enemies, NPCs, the world, this, that, and the other, with those kind of limitations? How do you still provide immersion when there's only so much that can be fit on the screen? How do you put this huge, lofty idea into a cartridge that can only store, how much memory can an NES cartridge hold? That's a really good question. Maybe Editor Me can put that on the screen somewhere, just while I'm doing some quick editing. But there's something about that. How do we make this work? That kind of, we can look at now and go, that's, again, it's like, that's nothing. But back then it's groundbreaking. It's completely out of, it's a completely new thing. Maybe what this particular game at that time, their story was groundbreaking and has now just become a trope. Tropes have to come from somewhere. And, there's no internet updates. There's no DLC, which I think DLC for new, modern gaming has the potential to be a really cool addition. There have been DLCs as small as a new weapon skin, or a new armor skin, or new armor set, or a new playable character for Smash, for instance, to as far as for things like Elder Scrolls Skyrim, going back and exploring a portion of Morrowind, or an entire additional campaign portion. Think the Teal Mask and Indigo Disc for Pokemon Scarlet Violet, or the DLC for Assassin's Creed 3. More multiplayer maps for things like Halo 3. I mean, that, there's a large list of various ways that DLC can be incorporated into games. And with retro games, you don't get DLC. If you want to include new content into that old game, either you put it into the sequel, or 20 years down the road, you remaster the game and add the features at that point. That's kind of how it is. But when you get a retro game, what you paid money for, that's what you have in your hands is the experience you are going to get. So long as the disc and cartridge actually do work, that is also a thing to consider. And I think there's to answer my preference is I prefer retro games. And because I put that little pin in that comment earlier. One of the questions that I did ask Stu Magoo is preference of physical or digital media, and I have to stand with Stu Magoo, and I prefer physical media because being able to hold in my hands and be able to say listen to a CD or watch a DVD in the event that a streaming service does not have that available, or I don't, for whatever reason, I don't have internet access and I can't play my game because it's a digital only, or I have to wait hours and hours waiting for that game update to load, and that's just to play the game. That's like day one, you have to sit there for however long waiting for that update just so you can just start the game. Like, I'll just reach into here. Cool. Like, SOCOM Combined Assault. I have a PS2. I open up the disc drive. I put this in. I just start playing the game. Like, there's not a need for a significant download. Just to also be abundantly clear, I have fiber internet, so my downloads have dropped significantly over the last not quite a year, but at least the last few months. So I've been able to complete downloads really, really quickly. So, but that being said, I have gone through the period of waiting hours and hours for those updates to come through, even having to do things like, hey, I'm going to bed, I'm leaving my console on connected to the internet, so that way that big update can actually get done while I'm asleep. Next day I can actually pick up the game and start playing it. And it's just one of those unfortunate things where it's like, what happens when what happens when like the servers for that particular console end up going down? Am I just not allowed to play that game anymore? Live service games, I don't particularly love that either. Yes, it's cool because it's like, oh, new characters get added, new skins. Marvel Rivals is kind of a perfect example, but you're kind of forced into this spot of like, this is the only game you're going to play, and this is the only game you're ever going to be allowed to play. Like that, it's one of those situations that I don't really find is good, healthy. You know, there should be the ability to play a game, walk away from it after you like complete a story, and potentially go back and replay it with a different result. Dishonored, you can play the game differently, and you can get a different ending. I mean, Final Fantasy 1, you have the party composition that you can do. Pokemon's another example. You can do a different team for the playthrough. There's I mean, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, I think, was the one that had certain decisions that you could actually do splitting decisions, and it would have some sort of an effect in the story moving forward in the game. Like there's really cool things that are available to give that variety. But there also has to be some level of control in the narrative, in the experience, in the gameplay loop, instead of just, hey, I'm gonna go sit down, play some games, and you're just queuing up, and you just queue up, and you just queue up and queue up, because it's kind of empty. There's not there's not a story being told. And I think that's something that video games have for themselves, that, you know, like, sure, movies can do the same thing, books can do the same thing, comics, manga, you know, these different mediums can tell a story, but there's something about a video game being able to be used as a medium to tell the story, that there's something about it that feels good. And, you know, there's not really a way to mimic or carry what that particular medium does, but you also have, like, it cannot be the same medium as a book. You know, maybe things from the book are incorporated into the game, or maybe it's inspired by a book, but they're going to have slight differences from each other because of just the mediums that they are as a whole. But I think retro gaming, kind of getting back on track, retro gaming, it feels like there's, in a way, more passion than the more modern titles. I mean, Final Fantasy is part of one of the things about Final Fantasy's making that is very, very interesting is, and I don't recall I don't remember his first and last name. I believe his family name is Sakaguchi, so I will refer to him as by that, and it's in by no means disrespect, or but Sakaguchi had stated in an interview, I believe it was sometime after Final Fantasy had released, but basically because of the financial situation that Square was in at the time, because they were not Square Enix, is he had said, this is going to, if this game flops, this will be the final video game I ever make. I'm going to go back to university and get a normal job. Ended up being a massive success, and he's, to my knowledge, still working with now Square Enix on more Final Fantasy games, and with Final Fantasy 1 having had multiple remakes, remasters, whatever. But you know, and it's the start of the development for this game was him and 3 other people. So it's these really small groups making these games and just pouring so much of themselves into it. I mean, one of the individuals working on the original Final Fantasy, I believe, if I recall the story correctly, no, I don't want to tie anybody's name. I don't want to spread misinformation, but there was one particular individual who worked on the original Final Fantasy who was very, very inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. So a lot of features from the D&D system at the time was brought in. Monsters were brought in, certain bosses, certain exploration elements, and just a lot of, it kind of felt like, you know, people were just, hey, I like this thing, let me throw it in and make something cool that has some aspect of everything that I like, is kind of the thing. And while modern games, I do believe that there are people who are passionate about the projects they are working on. I know recently Halo Campaign Evolved came out. People at Halo Studios, I am sure that there are people on the staff who have either been working on Halo games for a significant amount of time. Maybe they came from Bungie and then transferred over to 343 to eventually now becoming Halo Studios. And then people who are newer, grew up playing the Halo games, or so, you know, they have some love for the franchise in some capacity. But because there are so many people and bodies and perspectives and all of this being shoved into these games, is things are going to get lost in that development. And some of the magic, or, you know, the great ideas that are maybe thrown at the wall to like be considered for development, just aren't really able to be put in. And they kind of have to sacrifice certain aspects to, like, hey, we're including this new feature. Hey, there's this new mechanic we're including. Changing this, adding this, doing this, and there, you know, there's all this stuff being kind of put into the project, and there's things are going to be sacrificed. And I do believe that in a lot of the cases, the passion of the game itself, and there are games that are just feel like genuine just money grabs. You know, it doesn't feel like somebody sat down in that boardroom and said, we're going to make a game that does, pushes boundaries and feels fulfilling. I think in a lot of ways, I kind of get that vibe from shooter titles. Some people can make an argument that live service games can kind of satiate that, but I mean, you have like the gotcha systems, and it's just, oh, there's a swimsuit skin for Emma Frost in Marvel Rivals, and look up the Captain America swimsuit skin when you get a moment. Hopefully not on the work computer, but really funny. Really funny thing to look at. But and then the company's like, oh yeah, we're gonna offer these skins. Oh, but people are gonna have to pay us for the skins. Like, I also don't see a lot of modern games, especially over the last few years, that I really have to buy. The only real exception is Impulse, which is, I think, one of the rare exceptions that I've made to playing a game in early access. But it's a game that I can throw down with the homie. It's super goofy. I find the gameplay to be a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and it's that for me is, I feel at least somewhat fulfilled because I'm getting to spend time with the homie, and it's a for me a relatively unique gameplay loop. But not all games have that available to them. Ultimately, if I buy a game, I want to be able to put it in my console. I want to be able to play the game. I don't want to have to connect to the internet to play that game. It should be able to work right out of the box. It doesn't need to be the prettiest game. I just need it to work. And I want it to be a fun, compelling story. And I think modern games tend to not have that available because partially a focus towards multiplayer gaming, and in some capacities is that's the more interesting part of those franchises. And I hate to say it, but I'm not an online gamer anymore. Give me a good story and a handful of hours to sink into a game, and I'll feel a lot more fulfilled. But also physical media, I want to be able to pop that game in whenever I feel like it, and I like to be able to, like, if my girlfriend's over and she's like, hey, tell me about a cool game, I could pull the case out and be like, here's the game, do you want to try it out? I think that's pretty cool. Also, if I don't have internet access, I can still play the game. Like, my internet went out, and what am I gonna do? Last little bit of the podcast. This has kind of been brought up in my Discord. I'm gonna be kind of completely turning the conversation around in a different direction. This was something that was actually kind of brought up in my Discord, and I figured it's probably not a bad idea to bring it up here. It's also entirely possible that people will not even get to this part of the podcast. If you have, first off, thank you. please do hit the like button. If you are not subscribed and you do enjoy listening to me talk, even with my voice having cracked a little bit, I need to drink more water. Hit the subscribe button. Tuesdays, we will be uploading the podcast. You can also expect to see gameplay videos on Thursdays. And then Saturdays, if you are into the miniature painting hobby, tabletop gaming, I will have a link in the description for my tabletop channel. Go and check that out. I really need to sit down and record the next video. I've got it knocking around in here. Got to actually record it, do some editing, and find some pictures to put in for it. But the thing that's been kind of brought up a little bit in the Discord is I've been really quiet on stream. Quiet in terms of just streaming in general. And I figured I may as well talk about it here on the podcast and just kind of be upfront about it. So I have not streamed in, I think it's probably 3 weeks, maybe closer to a month, somewhere in that ballpark. And part of it is kind of a lack of desire to do so, and it's not a situation of I hate streaming or I dislike it or anything like that. With streaming, especially as of recently, is kind of having a hard time getting myself to do it, because in a way I almost feel unfulfilled with it. I'm brain's trying to fire at 700 miles an hour. Streaming doesn't really make me feel as though I'm able to use it as a creative outlet, where certain other hobbies or things that I do in my personal time have a little bit more, give me the ability to do so more. So with that being the case, I'm going to be halting streaming for some time. I don't know really what that time frame is. I think also there's a part of it that I've got, this hobby, I've got this hobby, I've got this hobby, I've got this hobby. I'm also trying to balance working a full-time job. I'm also trying to, I have a relationship that I'm still, continuing to try and nourish. Yes, I've been in the relationship for 2 years, but just because I've been in the relationship for over 2 years doesn't mean I can just, be lazy and not give that person any less attention. But then I've got all these other hobbies. I've got a full-time job. I've got a relationship. I've also got to figure out about doing the video editing, and I still have to be able to do gaming of my own for my own personal enjoyment. And there's a lot on my plate, and something I've had to learn how to do over the last year is prioritizing things, seeing what are priorities for me, and kind of not completely giving up on certain things, but allowing myself the ability to walk away from something until I can kind of return to it and give it more energy and give it more of my time, and maybe it becomes more of a priority. And right now, streaming just isn't feeling like a priority. It's getting pushed to the side for a lot more things. I mean, something I didn't bring up is like I'm working two jobs. I have a full-time job and then a part-time. I've got a relationship. I have a bunch of miniatures to paint. I've got video gaming that I'd like to do. I'd like to be able to read more books. I want to be able to play tabletop. There's a lot of things I'd like to be able to do, and unfortunately, I just don't have enough time in the day to do it. I think it's kind of an everybody problem, but also streaming, I don't really feel fulfilled after a stream right now, and there are other things in my life that I feel like I want to put more of my attention to, and I would rather be doing that than streaming. Again, like I said at the start of this kind of talking point, I don't hate streaming. I've been able to meet a handful of wonderful people, and I've been able to chat with and kind of reconnect with some homies that I maybe I'm not as good about reaching out to or hanging out with that I know personally. And streaming has allowed me to kind of, do both of those things. But I'm also understanding that right now streaming just isn't where I want to be putting all of my energy, and I think I could be putting my energy in better places. And weirdly enough, I think the podcast has actually kind of it's been more fulfilling for me than streaming has been. But maybe it ends up being a case that streaming is able to fill more of that void than the podcast. Maybe the roles kind of switch, and changes to the podcast may happen and streaming starts up again. I don't know what it looks like, but I figured with this episode is I would bring that up and kind of talk about it, so it is not really a secret. So figured make that as a thing. If you are not part of the Discord, I will have a link to that down in the description. That way, if for whatever reason either this is in the future and I decide to stream, or in the near future I go, hey, I'm getting a kick to stream, maybe I'm just gonna do some like random streams and just be like, hey, come hang out, whatever. Like I don't know, but like consistent streaming schedule is on a pause for an undisclosed amount of time. But links in the description for the tabletop channel. Keep an eye out for new videos over there. Discord, Twitch for whenever I do end up picking that back up. Do expect the next VOD for Legend of Zelda to be coming out on Thursday. I need to work on putting together a death tally, an in-game death tally, to just show how absolutely horrible I am at this game. But everything in the description. Next week, not sure what the topic's gonna be, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. Last little blurb. I'm gonna be trying to kind of standardize the length of the episodes somewhere in kind of the hour 10, hour 20 ballpark. Just kind of like time frame. Don't want the episodes to go too long. Don't want them to be too short. So I think kind of find a nice balance gives plenty of talking time for my ADHD rambling. But keep an eye out for other stuff coming out. Links in the description. And as I say at the end of all my videos, all my streams, all the VODs, everything, take care of yourself. Be good to one another. Stay safe. I'll see you soon.